All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog 2025, number 160. And today, still not feeling great. It's getting better. Hopefully, it'll suck. Hopefully in another week, I'm hoping I will be closer to my old self. But that's not what this video is about. I've been meaning to make this video for like, I don't know, a few days now. So, Renegade Con happened. If anyone is unaware, Renegade Con is effectively a really long Nintendo Direct, but Renegade. They announced a bunch of new things, but two of those things, and possibly four of those things I thought you guys might be interested in. They introduced a new source book for Werewolf the Apocalypse and Vampire the Masquerade. I don't play either of those games, though I do own both of them. The 5th edition, I got them through bundles. So those are things that happened. Just because those are not TTRPGs that I cover here, I tend to kind of ignore it because I don't have the money to keep up with another massively published TTRPG. But then they also announced two other things. The first one that I'm going to list first, just because it's kind of new, is a new TTRPG called Kids in Capes. So if anyone is unaware, there is a TTRPG called Kids on Bikes. I just want to look. Came out, it was kickstarted in, I don't know, 2019 it looks like. And then there was a second edition that was kickstarted in 2022. So Kids on Bikes is effectively a TTRPG system that tries to mimic like 80s coming of age films like The Goonies, stuff like that. It's relatively popular. Hyper RPG had an entire series that they did, and it has very similar to kind of like the Essence20 system. It has been used to power a bunch of other TTRPG systems. You have Kids on Brooms, which is basically Harry Potter but not. You had, I think, Teens in Space is another one that's meant to be that kind of Lost in Space kind of style feeling thing. Well, now they have announced for a November 2025 release, Kids in Capes. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is going to be a superhero themed version of Kids on Bikes. So you can do things like recreate the Teen Titans cartoon. That was an amazing cartoon and vastly superior to Teen Titans Go. And stuff like that. Your design, it's designed around the idea of still kind of coming of age style stories, but they're superheroes instead of kids wandering around, finding One-Eyed Willie's gold. And if you think that I'm making some kind of crass joke, no, that is the pirate featured in The Goonies, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And the Goonies are looking for One-Eyed Willie's gold. It just doesn't sound right at all, but it is what it is. So that in and of itself is pretty cool. I don't actually own Kids on Bikes. I think I do own Teens in Space, and I think that's the only Kids on Bike adjacent system that I own. Let us look. Yeah, I specifically bought Teens in Space because back last year when I was trying to figure out what I was going to use for my Metroid TTRPG, Teens in Space was kind of suggested to me as something I could do, and I realized that I'd never owned any of the Kids on Bike series. So I'm like, oh, I'll try this out. It didn't really work for what I wanted, but it's a cool system. So yeah, if you're looking for something else, the Kids on Bike system in and of itself is designed to be a little bit more, or if you're comparing it to something like even like 5th edition, a lot more rules light than even something like Daggerheart, which in and of itself is a little more rules light. Kids on Bikes and every kind of system that is based on Kids on Bikes is designed to be much more kind of narrative focused. There's not nearly as many kind of rules and classes and all that stuff. It's a much more simplistic game, but it's still a ton of fun. Hyper RPG used Kids on Bikes. I think they used Kids on Bikes for Kolak, which is probably their most successful TTRPG series that they ran. Not that I didn't absolutely love Power Rangers Hyperforce, but Kolak eventually got picked up by AMC. So, and they did, like, Zach was very, very proud of Kolak because it did kind of push the envelope with a lot of things in the TTRPG streaming space. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's a thing, and I thought that was cool. However, the thing that you guys are probably all waiting for, they have announced a new Essence20 book. It is a new G.I. Joe book called Hawk's Personnel Files. And basically, if you don't know who Hawk is, General Hawk is a big dude in G.I. Joe. He's like the head dude in G.I. Joe. But he wasn't always General Hawk. At one point, he was it Captain Hawk? What was he? They say in here, and I'm just looking, Colonel Hawk, there we go. He was Colonel Hawk, and he was one of the original G.I. Joes when they first came out. So, General Hawk's Personnel Files is designed kind of similar to how the Transformers 1 book is designed to be, hey, let's talk about kind of the origin of the Transformers. Hawk's Personnel Files is a book designed to let you play G.I. Joe adventures in the very early versions of G.I. Joe, before you had stupid things like continuity and plot to worry about. And it was mostly just to sell children toys. So that in and of itself is interesting. Again, I've mentioned this many times before. I am not a huge fan of G.I. Joe. It's not that I think it's bad or anything like that. It's just not the thing that I grew up with. Whereas Power Rangers, I watched the first episode. Okay, so when it originally aired. In Transformers, again, the G1 stuff was a little before my time, but Beast Wars, I watched almost every episode. Loved it, still love it to death. And so both G.I. Joe and Transformers have a much stronger connection, or not G.I. Joe and Transformers, let's try this again. Both Power Rangers and Transformers, I have a much closer connection to than G.I. Joe. So this particular book, it looks interesting. It doesn't look, according to the features section, the G.I. Joe role-playing game's first advanced role, Old Hand, a dependable veteran ready to pull their squad out of the fire. I don't know what an advanced role is. I mean, technically we have the advanced spectrum roles for Power Rangers, but as I've mentioned before, the advanced spectrum roles, for the most part, really aren't that different. Like the White Ranger was the first advanced spectrum role we got, and it isn't a great role because it's basically Red Ranger with a couple extra things, because that's what it was on the TV show. I mean, when Tommy became the White Ranger, he basically took over the team, and Jason became a significantly less focused character. And then when he left and they replaced him with Rocky, Rocky probably had some of the worst character development of any Power Ranger character ever. Not because he was a bad character or anything like that, but he was the leader color without being allowed to be the leader, and they just didn't know what to do with him. They were able to do a little bit more with him in Zeo, but mostly because he got to be the Blue Ranger there, and therefore they didn't have to. A lot of the times with the Red Rangers in general, their character development is them learning how to become a leader. And Rocky wasn't the leader. Rocky was never the leader of the Power Rangers at all. So he just really never got the character development. So what does that mean for advanced role, the old hand? I don't really know. I mean, if we look at what advanced roles are in the Power Rangers RPG, they're basically classes that, or at least when they were first introduced, they were classes that weren't designed to be played at first level. They were designed to start at a higher level, which is why, if I remember correctly, the White Ranger didn't even really have any abilities that they got at first level, because they were designed to be used almost exclusively by using the Spectrum Shift perk, which you don't get access to until level 4. So if that's what it's going to be, it kind of would make sense, because Old Hand, a dependable veteran, ready to pull their squad out of the fire. This is someone that already has significantly more experience, so I could definitely see this being a role that's designed to be either a character that is introduced later in the campaign, or even maybe a character that is designed to start at a higher level with a lower level party and act kind of as a mentor to them. I don't know, but it is going to be something a little bit different. In addition to that, I'll just read through all the features here. 64 stat blocks for heroes and villains from the beginning of G.I. Joe, and contact perks for the Joe guest stars for your campaign from Ace to Zap. I've said this many times before. One of the things that I think that G.I. Joe, or just Essence20 in general, has done better than any system I've ever seen is their contact system. This is a way to reward your players for caring about the NPCs and developing relationships with your NPCs. The contact system in and of itself gives them mechanical benefits, and from a kind of rule of cool factor, the idea of being able to see these characters, using your contact points to have them come in and help save the day or something like that, that feels really, really cool. So I'm always a big fan of anytime they introduce new contacts. I love them. I think they're super, super cool. I tend to love Power Rangers contacts more than G.I. Joe because I don't have an attachment to G.I. Joe. But just contacts in general are great. Next, new character options, including 7 influences like the Explosive Engineer with Nerves of Steel and the Coast Guard origin. Another thing I find interesting, how did we not have a Coast Guard origin before now? If anyone is just unaware completely, until relatively recently, we have 5 branches of the U.S. military. And each one specializes in different things. You have the Army, and they are ground forces just in general. You have the Air Force. They do stuff in the air. Who would have thought? You have the Navy. They do stuff on the water. And those are your 3 kind of big ones. The fourth one that a lot of people will kind of argue about, because it's technically a part of the Navy, is the Marines. And the unique thing about the Marines is the Marines are technically the president's personal armed forces. The president himself can actually command the Marines to do things without congressional oversight, whereas every other branch of the military has congressional oversight. The Marines are the president's kind of personal armed forces. They're also nuts, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible. Also, if you tell a Marine that they're technically a part of the Navy, you may not walk away from that conversation. And then the fifth branch is what's called the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard kind of gets shit on a lot because they're not like super fancy and, they don't go to war because the Coast Guard's whole job is to guard our coast. Like, that is their entire purpose, and they are exceptionally good at it. I actually had a friend of mine from high school. I think she was a year or two behind me, but she played either tenor sax or bari. I can't remember which. She was a cool girl. She immediately after graduating enlisted in the Coast Guard and did amazing, wonderful things there. The Coast Guard probably is the armed forces branch in the U.S. that gets the least amount of credit, that does the most amount of work for that lack of credit. Like, they're literally working every day. Like, wartime, peacetime, whatever, the Coast Guard is always doing shit. If we're not actively in a war, the other branches of the military don't quite have as many things to do. It doesn't mean that they're sitting on their ass. There's still a lot of things that all four other branches of the military are doing. But the Coast Guard, always working. And then there now is a sixth branch of the military called the Space Force. We're not going to talk about it, but it's a thing. And as soon as we get intergalactic space travel, like, I'm signing up for the Space Force because I want to be on the Enterprise and, seeking out new life and new civilization. But as of right now, technically, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, like, a lot of people think the Space Force is just a joke, mostly because Steve Carell made a TV series called Space Force, which was a joke. It was a comedy series, and my understanding was it was very funny. But it's actually not. What it basically was is, up until that point, the Air Force really handled all of our stuff involving, like, satellites and space missions and stuff like that in cooperation with NASA. And because the Air Force does a lot of stuff, like, they are very, very active, doing tons of stuff all the time, creating the Space Force basically kind of chopped off that part of the Air Force into its own branch, because the stuff that we're doing in space, again, involving satellites and the International Space Station and all those other things, and if we do start doing things like trying to, get to Mars and colonize, other planets, like, all of that stuff, it is stuff that we're actively trying to do. It wasn't really fair to kind of put all of that on the Air Force, because the Air Force already has a ton of other stuff that they're doing, so they just kind of chopped that portion off, and now they're the Space Force. Again, make whatever jokes that you want. It is a legitimate thing that has an actual purpose. However, it doesn't have a lot to do right now because we haven't been doing a ton of stuff in space recently. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that we finally have a Coast Guard origin. So yeah, the next thing, 29 new general perks to customize your hero or villain. Disrupt your foes with frequency interference like Breaker, or make your way across the battlefield via tactical gymnastics like Scarlet. So new perks are always useful, just because perks are general. For the most part, any character can take them as long as they meet the prereqs. They're not tied to a role or a focus or anything like that. It's whatever you want. So adding 29 new general perks massively expands what you can do. Next, get right into the action with pre-generated characters for all 13 original Joes like Grand Slam, Short Fuse, and Colonel Hawk. Exactly what you would think. I'm interested, anyone here that plays any of the Essence20 games, have you ever actually used one of the pre-generated, I'll call them hero characters, but one of the actual characters that they give you a stat block for? Like in Transformers, like they give stat blocks for Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and stuff like that. Or here they're giving you Grand Slam, Short Fuse, and Colonel Hawk. have you ever actually used one of those stat blocks in your games? I guess with both Transformers and G.I. Joe, it's kind of implied that all of those people still exist. So interacting with them doesn't seem strange. But for Power Rangers, like, you're kind of creating your own Power Rangers group. So using stat blocks for something like Tommy Oliver would be kind of weird because he's not a part of your Power Rangers team. So, again, interested to hear, do you guys ever actually use those stat blocks or no? And then finally, guidance on running adventures and campaigns during G.I. Joe's golden era. So that's the new book. It'll be coming out in November 2025. And like all of the Essence20 books, pre-order it. You get a free copy of the PDF. One thing I did find kind of interesting about Kids in Capes specifically, normally what Renegade does is if you pre-order one of their books, you'll get a PDF for free. However, for Kids in Capes, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about it, instead of getting a PDF for it for free, theirs is for limited time, orders will receive a copy of the Kids on Bikes dice set at no additional cost. So instead of getting a free PDF, which I don't know if they're even going to have a PDF for this, because it's so brand spanking new, they don't have a listing for the PDF version of it. A lot of times they won't list the PDF version until either right before the print version, physical version launches, or a little after that. So yeah, I don't know if they're actually going to have a PDF version of it, but they do have two different flavors of Kids in Capes. They have Kids in Capes and Kids in Capes Deluxe Edition. I can't remember what's in the Deluxe Edition, but anyway. So yeah, that was the stuff that we learned at Renegade Con. There were other stuff that was announced there too, like there's a bunch of new board games, like there's a bunch of new HeroScape stuff that was revealed. If you're not familiar with HeroScape is basically a miniature kind of combat simulator style game that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, they're always adding new stuff to it, and I think it's a cool system. I've never actually played it, but I think it's a cool system. But as far as like RPGs in general, again, we got Werewolf and Vampire, which are always getting new books, and then one Essence20 book, which is a little different. Up until probably the last year-ish here, whenever there would be an announcement of Essence20 stuff, we normally would get a new book for each system. And now it looks like they're staggering their releases, where they will just do one book for one system and then a different book for a different system. Like we're going to be getting the Transformers 1 source book, I think in the next month here. The PDF is already available. Now we have the role-playing game, or Hawks personnel files to look forward for G.I. Joe. And that probably means the next Renegade Con, we're probably going to get a Power Rangers announcement. But gone are the days when we're going to have 3 different Essence20 books getting announced simultaneously, or at least that's how it's happening now. I don't know. Again, we had one of the people that actually used to work on the Essence20 team mention that they have a lot of books kind of in the hopper ready to be published for Essence20 stuff. So it's not like they don't have more stuff that they can publish. And with all the tariff stuff and how popular and how big a push HeroClix is right now for Renegade, they've been putting a lot of their focus on HeroClix and dealing with that stuff, as opposed to their TTRPG stuff. And to be blunt, if they have to make a choice between the World of Darkness stuff and the Essence20 stuff, the World of Darkness stuff is more popular than Essence20. So we're always going to be getting new vampire books, new werewolf books, probably fairly regularly new Hunter books, but Hunter the Reckoning is not quite as popular as Werewolf and Vampire. So those are just going to keep coming out over and over and over again. But we might start. I mean, we definitely have seen the Essence20 system starting to slow down its book release dates, which for me is nice. I don't have the money to keep up with all the Essence20 books, and I was starting to have a really, really hard time doing it. So I'm fine with quantity over quality. There were a few books that came out when they were putting out, 3 to 5 books a year. There were a few books that came out that just the quality was really, really bad. The actual stuff that was in there was perfectly fine, but the layout designs were really, really bad. They were very, very confusing to be able to read and everything like that. And so now if they're just focusing on, no, we're going to do one Essence20 book at a time and then we'll move on to the next one, I'm good with that. I'd much rather see higher quality books coming out than a million low quality books coming out. Interested to hear from you guys, though. First of all, you excited about the new G.I. Joe book? Have any of you guys played any of the Kids on Bikes style games? And what do you think is going on with Essence20? Are we starting to see a sunset, or do you think it's like I said, they've just realized, no, we need to focus on quality over quantity? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's going to be all for me today. And we'll see you guys next time. All right? Oh, reminder, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Central Time, twitch.tv/TrainerJody. I am running a Daggerheart game where I'm going to be running the Village of Hoblet, which is one of the original D&D Adventures series, actually written by Gygax himself. So tune in. It's all for me today. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.